So what should America's schools do now? Hello, everybody, and welcome to the conversation. I'm David Schuster. With the Delta variant spreading and case numbers way up, particularly among younger Americans, a growing number of schools are worried about safety protections for COVID. There's some talk among some teachers unions about perhaps not having school if the right safety protocols are not in place. Here to talk about that is Aaron With. He is the CEO of Freedom Foundation. They are an organization that tries to battle the power of unions. Aaron, good to have you on board. Isn't this more of a safety issue than a union issue?
I don't think so. I think that what we've seen from kids over the last 18 months is that they're largely unaffected by COVID. We've had this trade-off for the past 18 months with kids' education versus their health and safety. And don't get me wrong, at the start of COVID, I think that none of us really knew what the effects were going to be on children, but now we do. We know that they're largely unaffected by COVID. Certainly, it's a small portion that are ever hospitalized from this that get severely sick. So I think it's time to put our kids' education ahead of one of the perceived dangers of COVID.
Well, maybe a small percentage, but compared to a year ago, it's a much higher percentage, right? I mean, the Delta variant is much more communicable, is much more dangerous than the original COVID-19. And again, it goes after people who are largely unvaccinated, and the people who are not vaccinated yet are people who are younger than 14 years old. So why not at least require masks or all the various safety precautions that teachers and schools and even parents have come to expect?
I think that it should ultimately be down to the individual parents on what they want to do with their kids in terms of vaccines, in terms of mask mandates. I think that it should be up to them exclusively, not forced to them by any kind of government. Ultimately, we know the data that's out there right now. Parents know how to make informed decisions. I think it's condescending to see the CDC and the government try and mandate things like masks amongst kids that, again, have a very low susceptibility rate for COVID.
But if it's condescending for the government to say that they must wear masks, isn't it also condescending for the government to say, we're going to defund you if you require masks? In other words, that's what's being done in Florida. Republican Governor DeSantis has said that he will defund schools if they have a mask mandate. And I thought conservatives were all about leaving it to local governments, local school boards to decide, not a state capital, not the federal capital to decide.
Yeah, I completely agree. It should be down to individual school districts. I think that this is an opportunity for parents and students alike to be looking at what school choice looks like. If you're not happy as a parent in Florida of what your schools are delivering, they should have the ability to go and take those dollars and be able to take their kids into a school that perhaps would provide them the benefits that they're looking for. Just the same way in Washington State, the state that I'm in, very liberal state, they're mandating masks. They were preventing our kids from being able to go into schools for over a year here in Washington State. Parents should have had the ability then to be able to take their kids out of the public schools that many believe were failing them and be able to take them into schools that could do the job of teaching them during the same time.
There is this idea of a possible vaccination. Well, there is a vaccination mandate in several states. There's a possibility that schools will require all teachers and staff and have required them to get vaccines. There's also the possibility that perhaps by the wintertime, there might be a mandate for children to get vaccines, just like children have to get vaccines for polio and rubella and measles and mumps. What would be the difference in this case?
I think the difference is COVID isn't rubella. COVID isn't mumps. It's a disease that, again, largely amongst kids has been unaffected. They've been largely unaffected by COVID. We know the facts of COVID. We know what has happened over the past 18 months, and parents should be able to make their own decisions on what is in the best interest for their kids. If this vaccine works so well and we accept that, then why are we forcing others to go out and get it? If it protects you from the possibly getting hospitalized and certainly death, then why are we forcing others to go out and get it? That's the part for me that I don't agree with.
Well, it's also sort of an argument I don't quite understand, because even though polio has been largely eradicated, we still require families to have their children get a polio vaccine, a tetanus vaccine, and the rest in order for them to be able to go to school. So if we require vaccinations for diseases that have largely been eradicated, why not require a vaccine or at least a mask to protect people against a virus that is very much alive and does seem to be increasing in terms of its potency and danger to children?
It's not polio though. It's not a disease that's been killing certainly kids
But it has been killing some kids. There have been some kids that have died. There's certainly an increased number of younger teenagers who are being hospitalized now because of the Delta variant.
And let's not downplay that as anything less than a tragedy. It absolutely is. But all these people have access to the vaccines. The vaccines that have been allegedly proven to go out and protect the individual from being hospitalized or the possibility of death. If kids, parents, and people want to go out and get the vaccine, they all have access to go and do that. It should be an individual choice, though.
Should that individual choice extend to teachers and staff? I mean, look, let's buy your argument for a second. Let's suppose that kids largely don't get the coronavirus. There's not a great deal of danger for them, even though some may be hospitalized. They can still, according to the science, transmit the coronavirus, the Delta variant, to grown-ups, to adults who may be more susceptible. So if somebody's a teacher in a school and maybe they have got the vaccination, but they still want masks on everybody who's in that school to prevent them from being vulnerable, what's wrong with that?
The teacher has the ability to go and get the vaccine right now. Everybody has the ability to go out and get it, and that is what's going to protect them from hospitalization and potential death. We shouldn't be forcing kids to go out and get the vaccine or go out and wear masks. Well,
let me stop you there, though. Can we force adults? Can we force the teachers and the staff to get vaccines?
No, I don't think so. They've got the choice to go out and do it, and they've got a choice to go and take the vaccine or not. That's up to them.
Then can we also say to a teacher or a staffer, look, it's your choice. If you don't want to get the vaccine, then you are not welcome to keep your job at this particular school?
I hope that it doesn't come to that. That would certainly be, I'd say, not the teachers' unions' prerogative, because ultimately you want to keep teachers that are good teachers in school, regardless of what they do on vaccines. We want to be improving kids' education. We don't want to be forcing teachers out. We've had hundreds and thousands of teachers calling our phones at the Freedom Foundation, completely disagreeing with what the unions have been doing for the past 12 and 18 months. And some of them have unfortunately quit. These are people that had probably 20 years left in their careers and have gone and moved on to do other things. I think that's the real tragedy. And I don't think we're going to be able to really weigh what the reaction to COVID has done for years to come, because kids' education has slipped rapidly during this time.
Well, I think everybody would agree that obviously not having students in class, certainly, kids, any parent, as any of us who have children know, a Zoom class is not as effective as having a child in class learning from a teacher. But having said that, it's better than not having any class at all. And again, shouldn't there be some alternatives if the Delta variant continues to spread and all these efforts to try to mitigate it are not working? Sure, shouldn't we have the ability to have a very robust remote learning system again? And should we also have the ability for students and families that do want to choose to send their kids to class to know that every measure is being taken to protect them?
Yeah, I think that what we should be doing, though, David, is expanding school choice. We should be expanding the ability for kids to be able to go and to get into different schools that best suits them. I think one of the problems that we've seen from the teachers' unions is they're trying this one-size-fits-all model, and as we've seen, that doesn't work across the country. We've got students in Alaska are very different than students in New York City, for example. We shouldn't be trying to put on this one-size-fits-all model for kids. We should be allowing them to go and make educated decisions on what they want to do in their education.
Would you agree that the teachers' unions, at least in other issues, have been successful to the betterment of society? And I think specifically of states like West Virginia and other states where they have the unions through their strikes and their action have been able to get teachers to be paid more for educating kids. That's a good thing, right?
I think that, yeah, teachers that want to go out and get paid more for exceptional work should absolutely go and do that. The problem is, again, it's this one-size-fits-all model. My wife is a public school teacher, and she's come home telling me the horror stories of teachers that are not representing the best interest of their kids, but they're unfireable. Where at the same time, you have exceptional teachers that actually can't go and represent themselves in a contract negotiation with their employer, even though they may be delivering a far better product than somebody else. I don't think that we need government unions in society anymore. I think that their days have gone. I think that they were certainly relevant at the dawn of time when we had kids dying in the coal mines and the steel mills and all that type of stuff. But we don't have those working conditions anymore. You could say that they won in that regard. These teachers' unions have become political entities where they export millions of dollars from teachers and other public employees and funnel that money into politics. That's the big problem that we have here.
Well, that is certainly a debate for another day that we should get into. But real quickly here, before we go, how do you envision the next 6 months going in terms of schools, regardless of what we may want it to happen? What's your gut in terms of what will happen?
Unfortunately, I think we're going to start to see America shift into two sides of society where you have liberal states potentially locking down again, potentially forcing masks, and hopefully not, but possibly even forcing vaccines. And those states that are wide open, that are ran by Republicans, I don't think that's good for society at all. I think it separates America, but unfortunately, that's what I foresee happening in America.
I agree. I also think, though, it's not good for society to have a pandemic rage on as it is. Aaron Wyeth, he is the CEO of the Freedom Foundation. They take on the power of unions. Interesting discussion, Aaron, about what's going to happen with teachers' unions. Thanks for joining us on the conversation. We appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.